World 15, folks. Let's pick 15 players from the top 15 countries in the world to make a World 15. Up front, I'm going to say I am recording this mid-March because I'm going to be away from New Zealand for a brief period in April. So this is a kind of preloaded video. These are the world rankings as I sit here recording this. Portugal in 15th, all the way up to the Springboks in 1st. And we're going to pick one from each country to make a World 15. The way I like to do this, which is not the right way, I like to pick from 15th up to 1st because I know I will know, at least in decent detail, some of the star players from the teams which maybe aren't at the top of the world rankings, the non-Rugby Championship, non-Six Nations teams. But by the time I'm getting to the likes of France and the All Blacks and the Springboks and Ireland, even if I've only got 2 or 3 positions left to choose from, the guys in those positions should be pretty good. So you could do it another way. You could pick from top to bottom. You could pick like World Player of the Year. You could go with Adi Savia first and then work your way down. But the way I like to do it, I don't want to be stuck like, who do I pick if I've only got one pick left and it's a Portuguese guy and it's, I don't know, like, do I just have to pick the Portuguese halfback or not, something like that? That's the way I like to do it. So starting with Portugal. I am going with one of the World Cup stars. I will admit I haven't seen him play probably since the World Cup, but Rafael Storti. He's going to go on my right wing. So Rafael Storti lit the Rugby World Cup up, scored I think 3 tries at the Rugby World Cup, was on a hell of a try-scoring run in his D2 club over in France. What have you done for me lately? I don't actually know, because I haven't seen enough of Portuguese rugby recently. But I know from what I saw of him in recent times, being just last year, the dude is a heck of an attacking-minded player. So Portuguese guy to start things off. My Samoan pick was a pretty easy one. I went with a guy who Premiership fans will be very familiar with in Theo McFarland. You're going to stick him in the second row. He is absolutely right up there with the best locks in the world. Really physical, but also really skilled. Like, he has an unbelievable skill. I forget, did he play basketball? He certainly played some other sport, and it shows kind of in the way he plays. He's not like a traditional, just like nuts and bolts, jumping at lineouts, clearing out, tackling, lock. He can do a bit of everything. So Theo McFarland, genuinely one of the most talented guys, I think, in the game, especially in that second row position. Georgian, and it's maybe an endorsement into the way that the Georgian game has kind of changed over the years. And then I'm going with a back for the Georgians. You would have always thought previously you go with a forward, but I've chucked in David Niniashvili. I'm going to put him at fullback. He's another one who I haven't seen that much of lately because I haven't been watching the top 14. I know he kind of can play wing, can play fullback, but I'm chucking him at fullback. He scores tries. He kicks goals. He's genuinely an attacking-minded weapon at fullback. And I remember when we did the kind of World Cup preview with Sergio Parise and those guys, and of all the guys Sergio Parise could have picked as like his one to watch, Niniashvili was his pick, so he certainly has pretty good credentials. Next one I'm going to pick from Japan. I'm going to go with probably a pretty easy pick in Kazuki Himeno. He'll be pretty familiar to New Zealand fans, I think, because he spent a season here in New Zealand with the Highlanders, but good number 6 or number 8. In this case, I am checking him on the blind side, so not like the biggest kind of traditional massive unit of a man on the blind side, but he carries and he busts tackles. He makes a heap of tackles, and he's a good threat at the breakdown. So a real kind of jack of all trades. You can put him at 6, 7, or 8 and still get good value out of him, and jumps at line-out time as well. So Kazuki Himeno, one of the better players that Japan has produced in this kind of current generation. That leads us on to Fiji, and I'm going to put it's a back. Nayatalevu. Waisea Nayatalevu, he is the captain of Fiji, at least he was at the World Cup. And I think he has one of the kind of most all-round attacking games of midfielders in World Rugby, because he's not just a guy who can set his teammates up, but he is also a guy who's quite capable of going himself. So some guys excel at one, some guys excel at the other, or kind of lean one way or the other. This guy genuinely can do both. So Waisea Nayatalevu in the midfield. Wallabies pick, I am going to go with a big unit because I want some size in the second row in old Will Skelton, because you got your skills guy with Theo McFarlane there. So Will Skelton, I think, is a good kind of accompanying pick to Theo McFarlane, because he's a big lump of a human being. He is certainly going to strengthen you at scrum time. You're probably not going to want to lift him in the line-out because, as I said, he's a large human. But yeah, he plays his best rugby probably over in France, but he was captaining the Wallabies up until the point where he got injured. And yeah, certainly he is a pretty hard object to move and a pretty hard object to stop. Italy, who as I record this are ranked above the Wallabies, certainly one of the better players with 1 week to go as I record this of the Six Nations, Tommaso Menoncello. He has been in phenomenal form. Maybe going under the radar a little bit, but his relationship with Brex has been phenomenal. The guy busts tackles. The guy can play on the wing. He's getting run meters. He's getting turnovers. He's making tackles. Huge work rate. Huge fighter bottom. He's stronger than it looks like. He's not the most massive human being, but you wouldn't know it with the way he hits. So yeah, he has been phenomenally impressive, and they really missed him at the World Cup. So Tommaso Menoncello. So that is a kind of mix. He's at inside centre for this one. This side of the board, Wales, and I went with a guy who has been also excelling in the Six Nations, and Tommy Reffel. Tommy Turnover, he has been nicknamed because as I record this, I think he has won 8 turnovers for Wales in the Six Nations thus far, and I believe the next best guy in the Six Nations after him has 5. So anytime you are kind of getting towards double your closest rival, you're doing a pretty bloody good job. He's been tackling the house down. He's set up at least 1 try in the Six Nations, but his work at the breakdown has been phenomenal. So a great replacement for Jack Morgan, who's been out. So Tommy Reffel is in cracking form, and Wales certainly have a lot of good loose forwards. He's me open side. Argentina, I keep picking captains. I don't mean to. Julian Montoya at hooker, obviously. I feel like he somehow gets underrated a little bit in the kind of battle of world's best hookers, but he's right up there. He's got a massive work rate. He tends to play a lot of minutes, and always one of the top carriers, always one of the top tacklers, always a threat at the breakdown. The line-out tends to operate pretty well, has all the skills you would need. Maybe he doesn't have like the exceptional one area. He's a bit of a jack of all trades, which maybe means he blends in a little bit instead of standing out. Like Malcolm Marx is such a phenom at the breakdown. It really stands out. Dan Sheehan's running game is so crazy. Tokiaho burrowing over from close range is immense, but Montoya can do a bit of it all for the Pumas. So he is my pick there. Scotland, maybe I kind of love him or hate him pick, but I've gone with Finn Russell. Some people hate him. They don't think he stands up in big games and lets the side down. I love watching Finn Russell. He's been pulling the strings for the Scottish side, who are a little bit of a kind of which Scottish side is going to show up kind of team. But when they do show up, he's phenomenal. He's been kicking goals exceptionally well the Six Nations. He's been setting up tries. He's been taking the ball to the line when it's on. Some games he's not. He's kind of relied more on the boot. But yeah, a co-captain of that Scottish side. Finn Russell, he's my pick there. England, I had to go with a guy who is in the absolute form of his life in Ben Earl. He's been doing everything as well. He's a jack of all trades, but he is standing out too, which is remarkable. He's like clocking up sometimes 100 run meters a game for a loose forward, which is insane. He's been scoring tries when it looks like he shouldn't be able to. Like he scored one in the Six Nations where he beat Bundy Aki from close range. He scored one where the English scrum was like down a man, and he still managed to kind of pick up the ball off the back of the scrum and just power over for a try. So he's been busting tackles, he's been getting into space, he's been winning turnovers, making tackles. Yeah, I've been loving the way Ben Earl's been playing. He has been phenomenal. So I will chuck him at number 8. France, I mean, you could go with Dupont if he's playing 15s. I am not putting Dupont in because he's playing 7s at the moment. So I'm going with another French halfback in Nolan Ligarec. This is maybe a little bit of a left field pick because as I record this, he's only made 1 test start, which is a big call to chuck him then immediately into the kind of test arena at number 9. I probably could have put a guy like Gibson Park there, but hey, man, this team is already looking pretty sexy. I've clearly picked a lot of attacking-minded players, and Ligarek is absolutely that. He scored a try in his first test start. He went for that behind the pass, like stupidly confident move in the game against the Welsh. I think he's going to have a decent career in France as long as he can get some game time when Dupont is certainly not available. But Nolan Ligarek looks the business. A New Zealander, I ended up going with Mark Talea. And yeah, he's going to be on my left wing. He's an absolute powerhouse. He beats defenders when he shouldn't be able to beat defenders. It's bizarre. It doesn't look like he's doing that much. But then when you look up the numbers at the end of the game, he's beaten 10 defenders. He's a really, really hard man to bring down. He's quick, and he's coming into the peak of his powers at 27. But that's usually the age guys tend to fall off a cliff here in New Zealand. We don't keep our wingers into their 30s usually, so it'll be an interesting one to monitor with him. And it's kind of no surprise that I think the top 2 teams in the world, I have picked props. And I think that, I hope, shows what I think is a very important part of the game, in that the other props around the world, I could have gone with some of the French props, to be fair. Like, I could have gone with Cyril Bay as my loose head and then chucked in Gibson Park. That maybe would have been a bit more sensible. But I've gone with Andrew Porter. Like, having good props, I feel like as much as the commentators sometimes don't like the scrum, having good props is sometimes the difference between being a number 1 or number 2 team in the world and being, a number 10 team in the world. Having good props at scrum time, having a good maul about you, having good set piece is so important in rugby union. So I honestly don't feel like it's a coincidence that I've put props in here with the number 2 and number 1 teams. Andrew Porter, hell of a scrummager. He has been conceding a few too many penalties in recent years, but as the Six Nations has gone on, he's been getting better. The Irish scrum is massive, and he's also a proper turnover merchant as well. He's been having a really, really good campaign to the point where he's probably outshining the other Irish props, which says a lot. And then genuinely one of my favourite players in World Rugby. I love the fact that my Springbok pick is Frans Malherbe, because somehow he doesn't get the love. He is one of the best scrummaging props you will ever see in your lifetime. I don't know why that doesn't resonate as much as, like, a guy who can strike the ball really well from the tee. But genuinely, what a phenomenal skill. When he retires, you're going to be missing out on seeing one of the world's best operators. How many points has he won the Springboks at scrum time? I feel like people have done stats on it in the past. It is a lot. So having a world-class tight head and a world-class loose head, I feel like sets your team apart, rather than if you just pick, like, Cheslin Colby and Jameson Gibson Park, and you end up with, no disrespect to these guys, but like a Samoan tight head and a Portuguese loose head kind of thing. I feel like you're better off going with the big dogs in those small number positions. But yeah, Frans Malherbe, and he's improved his work rate around the park in recent years as well. He's kind of fought off those critics who said he was only there for the scrum. But yeah, that's a World 15, folks. You guys let us know your thoughts. How would you pick it if you were picking? Would you just go the players that are the best in the world in your mind and then kind of fill in the gaps as you go? Top to bottom, bottom to top. How would you line one up if you were picking a 15 like this? You guys let us know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.